Good morning. We'll be starting up here in a couple of minutes once everybody's logged in, and I'll explain the lack of a bow tie. You may want to go ahead and open up your chat pod and your Q&A pod, and we will be doing polls like we normally do. We'll put that link in the chat pod, so that's why you want to open that one up. Hope everybody's in a nice air-conditioned office. I am not, so, but we'll play that by ear. Starting up here in about 2 minutes. One more minute. We'll give folks time to log in and maybe an extra 30 seconds or so because people tend to log in late. While you're waiting, you might want to go ahead and open up your chat pod and your Q&A pod. And I'll explain those things just a little bit as we get started this morning. Okay. Give folks about 30 seconds. We're going to go ahead and get started here. We're doing an experiment. You don't realize it. An experiment to see if hot weather affects attendance. We know good weather to get outside does, but there's a hot day, though it is cooler this morning. So good morning and welcome to one of our foundational webinars. My name is David Orr. I'm the director here with the Cornell Local Roads program. And we're talking today about finding, retaining, and motivating employees. Uh, this was originally going to be done by Victoria Beal, who's the director of the Ohio LTAP Center. We're the New York LTAP Center. But she had a conflict, so she shared a bunch of her materials. I put in my own spin on it. So the good things you can credit Victoria, the bad things you can blame me. That's fine. Please open up your Q&A pod. That's where I'm going to have questions for you. You can put your questions in. Open up your chat pod. That's where we'll send you links to both the handout and to the poll, so you don't have to type them in. We'll be doing those here in a little bit. And again, you need to open up your chat pod because Jody in the background has to actually put them in twice because we have to wait till you get your chat pod open. Now, we're going to do a little bit of a welcome. I want to see who's on our call today of our about just under 30 people who are logged in. So we're going to be doing some polls. Again, you can open it from the chat pod or it's pollev.com/DavidOrPE. And this will help me a little bit to see who's on the call and what we might be talking about today. Okay. So who do you work for? First thing, town, county, city, or village, state or fed. A few of you have already started. That's good. And if you can't access the poll, please put it in the Q&A. Just it helps us out. And today we have a blend of town, county, and state and fed. Consultants aren't getting their professional development hours, so they're not showing up today. Though that's still really useful for them. And here we go. They're showing up now. Okay. Okay. Let's get a sense of what your job is. Are you an administrator? You're the highway superintendent, commissioner? Are you an engineer, a planner, field crew, supervisor, board member? You do whatever the boss tells you to do. None of the above is allowed. Um, I mean, this is really aimed at everybody, and I would hope to see a good variety, but we'll see. We'll go with who's here. So Okay. About a little over half engineers and the rest blend of planners. Got some field crew. That's good, actually. How long have you been with your agency? Less than a month, less than a year, or actually current position, I put it. So when the 2 years, 10 to 5 and 20 plus. So we got quite a few 20 plus, actually about half a year. Okay, well, our goal with all these foundational webinars is to give you a basic introduction and then maybe give you one or two ideas you can take home and use. And we're going to be sharing some ideas today too. So we got a few of you actually less than 3 months on the job. Okay, interesting blend today. And then finally, you can click on the map. Where are you from? Click on the map from in New York. If you're not in New York, go ahead and click on it anyway. It's useful for me to see if there's folks from outside New York. And I did see someone put 10 years in the Q&A pod. Again, you can always use the Q&A pod if you can't access the polls. Okay. Okay, so we got a variety of folks, even somebody who clicked who's just outside the state in, looks like Connecticut. Yeah, okay. Quite a few in Rochester, downstate. And we have a Fishkill, again, in the Q&A. Okay, so today we're talking about finding, retaining, um, and motivating your employees. And sometimes it feels like the gulf between the people you want and the people you've got, or the people you can find, is just huge. Okay, and again, as I said, our goal today is to give you some bridges to help you find that right person to build your staff the way you need to have that built. And to do this, we're actually going to help each other. We're going to be doing quite a few quizzes, poll questions, and we're going to maybe have you raise your hand and use the Q&A as well. So let me just start with this one. Are agencies in your area fully staffed? Yes, no, or you're not sure? And let's just see what we get. Okay. Now, when we did this poll, the last time we did it, we had about 100 people at a highway school session. A lot of people said they weren't fully staffed. So let's see what we have today. Yeah, it's over half of you are still saying you're not fully staffed. And some of you just aren't sure, and that's okay. Um, but one of the challenges is finding good people, okay? Now, when we did a survey of the entire New York local highway community as one of our annual surveys 3 years ago, um, most people said they were fully staffed, about 2/3, but still there were quite a few who said no, and more critically was the number of positions down. Even if even though you count the ones who were staffed, there was a lot of people who were down by quite a bit, especially in some urban areas, downstate. These are New York State DOT regions, and you can see Long Island. They were down by average almost 9 people per agency that was down. So that can be a big challenge for you, depending on how many people you've got. Uh, so let's start by talking about what are your biggest issues for finding new staff. We're going to build a little Wordle here, or a word cloud, depending on how you like to define it. People have different ways they define that. Good old English, changing things. But what's the biggest issues you've got in finding new staff? Put one word in here. Pay. Pay. They're not qualified. Some issues with Tier 6 retirement. Oh, yeah, that's not bad. Qualifications and pay are starting to take over the answers a little bit. I'm not surprised by that. Okay. Okay. Availability. Do they have the experience? Issues with retirements? A shortage of just all experience? Okay. And small applicant pool. Okay. And one more question while we're here. And what is the most common reason people don't stay in the low volume road sector, i.e., local highway agencies? Whether that's, I say low volume road just to make it fit, but really any local agency, town, county, city, or village. Is it just pay? There's stagnation, there's retirement issues, opportunities probably for advancement. Yeah. Okay. Those common reasons we know about, okay? And you'll notice pay pops in there. And oh, poaching. And I'll come back to poaching. I'll definitely talk about poaching a little bit. Better opportunities. Yeah, I'll talk about that a little bit. But here's one of the things we know. Our friend Wile E. Coyote, you remember Wile E. Coyote? I grew up in the era of when these were acceptable, the cartoons. And they always say, if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. I mean, think about it. How many times do you have to try to go to capture the Roadrunner? and you do the same thing and it doesn't work. You probably got to thinking about different things than you may have done before, or retry some of the things you've done, but do them in a smarter way. So that's the goal. Give you one or two ideas to take home. Now, one thing I'm going to give you, there's a handout that's available to you. That handout, I will pull the handout up real quick. The handout has a general outline of what we're talking about, plus a few extra items that I got from Victoria out of Ohio. But it also has some resources that are available. And we'll talk about some of those resources as we go through the day. There's even a poll in there if you're interested in taking it from the Association of General Contractors on their workforce survey that they do every couple of years. If you want to go and take that survey, go for it. Absolutely. They wouldn't mind that at all. But let me give you a couple of ideas. So there's a thing called Everyday Counts from the Federal Highway Administration. It's in its seventh or eighth round now. But the last round, they had one on workforce development. Now, they've done all kinds of everyday counts things on pavement preservation, bridges. But again, one of the things they're looking for now is workforce development because it's known not just at the local level, but all the way up to the federal level. Finding good workers is getting harder and harder. So today we're going to give you some good ideas. Ideas maybe that are new and ideas that, they still work and maybe just haven't thought about them or haven't thought about them in a while. And here's a good example of an idea in the world of pavement preservation that still works. That sprayer on the back of this asphalt-bound macadam train is the same kind of sprayer system we use for chip seals today. Yeah, we don't use steam rollers. We have a lot more computer controls, but those sprayers in pretty much have the same design fan pattern that they had over 100 years ago. So some ideas will be new, some will be old, but a good idea is a good idea. So we're going to go through that a little bit as we talk things through. Now, where did I get my ideas? Well, I've been developing and looking at them for quite a while. We share with other centers around the country. If you're not aware, there are actually 51 LTAP centers across the country. I'll use different names, but they're all part of the same network. There are 7 that serve Native Americans and tribal technical assistance programs. So 58 centers, and we share ideas. In fact, we have a conference coming up. We'll be meeting and talking about things. And at these conferences, we not only share ideas, but those can be seeds to get something we can share with others. So here's one I brought back from a trip I took to Iowa for a meeting. And you can see there's a very low bridge. Now, why you would have a bridge ramp allow only a 9-foot clearance on a road going to a major cereal plant, I don't know, but you can see they put bars hanging down. So hopefully the truck hits the bars before it hits the bridge. There can be some pretty cool ideas. And I think we can probably get some from each other, from the 30 or so of us that are on today. So again, we've already talked about this a little bit. We talked about the biggest issues with the new staff. You don't have to put new answers in, but pay and qualifications definitely are come up quite a bit. When we've done this survey in the past at a national conference, we got the same answers, okay? So salary, qualifications, they don't have a CDL, they don't live close enough. Those things maybe not have changed. There might be some tweaks, but the idea is, what can we do about these things? And the same is true as why don't people stay? You put down pay, retirement, opportunities for advancement, poaching. Well, again, when we did this at a national conference, pay, again, just like you guys did, pops to the top, but locations, lack of opportunities for advancement, qualifications, same answers come into play. And yes, somebody put compensation and insurance, can come into play. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about finding, recruiting, and motivating your employees because you want them to stay. If you've got a good staff that stays, you don't need to go find new people. So you got to find them, you got to recruit them, and then you got to motivate them. And if you can get them motivated, they're going to want to stay. And we can't do it with a magic bullet. There isn't one. I apologize. I have a friend of mine who lives in Kentucky, which is where our national conference is this year. And he likes to say there's no magic bullets. We need a series of magic BBs. So let's give you some magic BBs. And we'll start with finding those new employees that might be hard to find, but maybe if you look carefully, they're much brighter than you might think. One of the first things you need to do before you start finding people is you got to know what the position does. Okay? You've got to have a job description. So look carefully at your job description and update it if it's needed to be updated. When's the last time you actually went through your job description and updated it? Does it still have things that are archaic or out of date in there? Okay. If you've got standard operating procedures and guidebooks or whatever term you like to use, look at those and share those ideas from there and put them into your job description. It's pretty important to make sure everything matches up carefully because you can get yourself in trouble. So make sure you know what the position does and don't discriminate. And I'm not talking about discrimination that we talk about this, the legal stuff, though you have to think about that. I'm talking about putting in requirements that means you don't find good candidates because things may have changed. We like to say higher attitude, trained skills. If you put a requirement in that says to people, "Ah, I'm not going to apply," you may find a good candidate doesn't apply. And so try not to put things in your job description that is going to turn somebody off who might be a really good worker. Yeah, you might have to train them a little bit, but try not to discriminate too early. Okay? Discriminate for quality, discriminate for attitude. And you got to be creative in your recruiting. That's actually very, very critical. So let's just ask a couple of questions. I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. This is the question that Victoria was posing, but I'm going to ask it a slightly different way. I want you to raise your hand if you have looked at a paper classified ad, in a paper, magazine, whatever, in the last 5 years, since COVID. Raise your hand if you've actually looked at a paper classified ad. We got two. Let's see, three people. Okay. So 3 out of 34. Okay. So about 10% of you. Okay. Most jobs these days are posted online, but let me just ask. This time I want you to put in as a poll. I'm not going to let you see the answers first. I want you to put your answers in. Where can you post your job? Where does your employer allow you to post your job? Not where you want to, but where does your government agency, if most of you work for government, where can you post your job? Okay, let's just see here. I'm going to give you about another 15 seconds, and I'm going to see what answers you get. Don't want you to influence others. Okay, let's see. Where can you post your job? Okay, you're allowed. Wow, that's good. LinkedIn. A lot of you are allowed to use LinkedIn, online, social media, the official county page, websites. That's good. Okay, that's good. And then some people are putting in the Q&A, they can only go through HR. So HR does all the posting. By the way, that's how we do it here at Cornell. Um, uh, let's try not to limit ourselves if we can. Okay. Yes, I know it's tempting folks want to control things, but what you're looking for is a good employee. And how you find them is really by looking in a broader net than we may have needed to look in the past. So obviously the most common online job posting boards, there's Indeed, which is a paid service. There's LinkedIn, that has a job posting thing, more typically for professional jobs, but more and more you're actually seeing even construction level work being done through the LinkedIn system. Sort of think of it as Facebook for business. Not quite the same, but similar. Things like ZipRecruiter. There's lots of online posting boards. And again, if you can't access those, talk to your HR people. You may find people that way. That just again, there's a change of what's available. But there are plenty of other job posting locations you might want to think about. American Public Works Association has a career page. That's in your handout. Your local APWA chapter may have something. Um, you may check with your local association. Some of them will post certain level jobs. BOCES. Raise your hand if you've actually worked with the local BOCES. If you're from out of New York State, BOCES is our vocational education program. Okay. Raise your hand if you've actually gone through BOCES. That's actually a really good place to recruit. There are community colleges and universities. Alfred State has a heavy equipment program. Most of those graduates have jobs before they graduate, especially in fields where it's hard to find people like electricity and plumbing. But even the heavy equipment operators, They get recruited right out of school and they've got full-time jobs right out of their associate's degree. So, and New York State does have job centers that you might want to take advantage of if you haven't done that in the past. The point is, there's other job posting locations. Think about, if you can, where does the demographic group, where are the people you want to hire hang out? Where are they? Okay. So what that means is you might want to talk to the folks who already work for you. Where do they hang out? Where do they find people? Where is that network of people that you can find? Post there, get the word out, create a network if you can. Now, y'all mentioned this, I didn't want to forget about it. And at first it sounds bad, and it is a reality that we have to deal with, and that is you can lose people to other positions. But remember, finding employees doesn't happen when you need them. So if you're out in Long Island, you might see a contractor watching your work. Well, what that contractor is doing, he's looking for your good workers. And he's like, hey, that guy's got good skills or that guy's got good attitude. He might poach your best people by giving them an extra $1 or $2 an hour, or even 3 or 4 or more in some cases. So you need to be looking at all times in some respects, even when you don't have openings, thinking about where that network is. If you can find the right person, that's really hard in government sector, I know, to bring people in. But boy, if you find the right person, it can make a difference. Maybe at least get them in summer help or something like that, or part-time. Um, so let's just ask, we'll do a little quick poll. What ways have you used to find and recruit new workers? Let's see if we got some other ideas. I've got a few more, but I want to see what you guys have. Yep, use LinkedIn. Okay, what else you got? Let's see if you come up with two, maybe 1 or 2 ideas that in college fairs. Yeah, and we'll come back to college fairs. New York helps. Yep. Okay, that's something you could look for. Career fairs. Okay. You can hire recruiters, some level positions. You might hire a recruiter. You might have construction career days or CDL days, put people in a truck. I'm going to talk about that. Talk to the local schools in your area, the counselors, professional organizations. Okay. Yep. The idea is you're always going to be recruiting. Okay. You're never going to be able to not be thinking about that. Even here, we're always thinking about it. It may take longer than you like. I mean, we've been working on getting an empty position filled now for quite a while. We're close, but it takes some time. So you need to always be recruiting and thinking about the network. Where's that talent? So the networking is the key. You're going to want to build your brand. Surprisingly, we'll come back to that when we talk about retaining and motivating. You need to match profiles. You want to build a good team. At the end of the day, you really want to make people want to work for your agency. If you've got a place people like working, you can actually overcome a lot of the issues, not all, but a lot of the issues with pay and retirement issues. And we'll talk more about the salary and pay issues here in just a minute that might help you with recruiting. But I do want to share with you 3 or 4 ideas we've picked up from our colleagues around the country that I think are pretty cool. So for instance, in the state of Michigan, rather than every single county and every single town doing their own marketing of open positions, the County Road Association, which is the equivalent of the New York State County Highway Superintendents Association here in New York State, they do joint marketing. So the association collects open positions and they do joint marketing. And so you can actually find jobs, maybe not in the county you live in, but the one next door or the next town over, and share that. So you give one site and people coming want to work in the public sector. So that one I thought was a pretty good idea. Um, you already mentioned the construction career days or touch a truck or whatever you want to call it. Get people interested in the field, and the sooner that you can get them interested, the better. Maybe not even don't wait till high school. Catch them before high school. Middle school is actually a good place. And in some cases, I've even seen where they've got elementary kids exposed. Uh, Gary up in town used to be with the town of Wyndham, used to bring in kindergartners to see their equipment and the plows and things like that. So exposing people to realize not everybody's going to go to college. I don't think they all should. And you might find some great workers that way. Now, we've had some other colleagues, they actually go and do an engineer in the classroom thing, and you think, oh, they're going to recruit engineers. Well, it turns out they actually find a lot of non-engineers who want to go into the trades, who want to go into other fields and think, oh, they have to do engineering. Well, if you can show them that no, find the job you like, someone will pay you to do it, get them interested, you may actually find a pathway for somebody who you could recruit later on, or one of your colleagues recruit later on. We're all in this together. The word of mouth, the networking that's in the Q&A is absolutely vital. And of course, having some open houses is not a bad idea, both for positions and also, by the way, the public goodwill that it creates to show people, hey, we're doing these services to help make your roads and streets better, improve the community, and improve safety. So an open house day, and I know several agencies here in New York State do those kinds of things. These just happen to be ones from our colleagues with other LTAP centers around the country. Now, let's talk about retaining these people, okay? How do you keep that crew so they don't cross the road, okay? Well, one way to think about it is that if you're trying to retain employees, you're actually trying to create leaders. This is a quote Victoria sent. True leaders don't create followers, they create more leaders. You need to create a team, okay? You'd be amazed how well that works because someone might not be able to be the boss, but if they are a boss, they're able to control their own schedule to a little bit. We'll talk more about that. You can do a lot if you create leaders. So, because let's just be honest, answer this question. Are salaries and benefits keeping up with inflation? Most of you work in the government sector, and I know what the answer is going to be, but I'll give you an up, see if anybody is going to say yes. I didn't think anybody would say yes. No, yeah, we all know that. The answer is no. We are not keeping up with inflation. So, this is more open-ended now. One word, going to build another one of these little word clouds. What can we do about salaries and benefits? And you're all going to probably think, I can't do anything. Ah, there you go. I was right. You're going to put nothing. Um, you're going to have to work with the board. You're going to have to look at alternatives. You're going to have to look at the benefits. You can complain, you can do nothing, but that's not going to help. You're going to have to think about things, and we're going to have to be honest with ourselves. But one of the things we need to do, especially in the government sector, as we try to get folks to work for us, is realize that salaries and benefits are a package. Okay? Yeah, we all agree there could be some real improvements with the retirement packages that are available. The Tier 6 has created certainly some issues. But salary and benefits are still a package. And those benefits may include things you don't think about. Okay, we're going to come back to that question, and we'll see if you guys, after I talk a little bit, come up with some of the things we found that actually are true benefits that you can come up with. I'm going to actually clear that last one real quick. So I'm going to clear it, and we're going to come back to that. Don't put any more answers in for now. Let's see if you come up with some different salaries and benefits. So let me just ask a simple question. How many days does an employee working for your agency get? That includes holidays, vacation days, personal time off. Okay? Things they're allowed to take every single year. How many days a year do they get? Okay? Give you a chance to put your answers in, and then we're going to click your responses in just a second. And the answers are, I'll scroll down a little bit. Nobody is less than 10. Some of you are greater than 25. I'm looking in the Q&A, and I've got ranges from a 16, 216 to 20s and a 1 over 25. Okay? If you talk to someone in the private sector, there are people working in the private sector, they work 9 months of the year and they get no days off. When they're working, they're working. And then they hopefully are working enough to get their unemployment, but it's not as much. So what is the total compensation package? Do they have to work overtime? Can they be the coach of a little league team? They get Fridays off maybe during the summer, which may not sound like much of a benefit. Surprisingly, a lot of people like that. Okay. So when you're thinking about, this goes even back to the finding folks, but even retaining folks, make sure they understand those benefits. And they may not. I mean, we know that younger people don't understand the value of retirement. And yet, those of us who are getting towards retirement realize how valuable that is. And the value of health insurance, which I've used 3 times in my life to large extents, and very grateful I've got it. So you have to look at that overall package. Okay. Now, one of the things agencies like to do, and be careful about it, it's called wage compression. They raise the starting pay. Okay. So we give a bonus to people. It's sort of like when you get a phone plan where people who've never been on the phone plan get a special deal. Well, if you don't raise the starting pay of everybody, you create resentments, people may be more likely to leave, and now you've got the cost of onboarding. What does it cost to bring in a new employee? And even find those employees? Isn't it cheaper to keep those good people? If you're going to raise starting pay, really, maybe you need to look at everybody's wages. It's hard. Trust me, this is not an easy conversation to have, but it's one we should be having. And to do that, you're going to have to bring in the town boards because they set the budget, and the county legislatures, they set the budget. And you need to find ways to have reasonable amounts. And then when you go to the public, you have to explain to them what's going on and compare that for real dollars. People don't want to necessarily hear it. I will be honest with you, but we need to have those conversations. And one of the things, though, you can do is look at the other things to help retain people beyond wages. So let's talk about some of those things. Now, one of them is training. Um, we had a safety engineer named Jim Markle, now works in Albany County. He liked to say that, people like to say, if I don't train my people, oh, excuse me, if I do train my people, they will leave. But he liked to say, what if you don't train them and they stay? Training should actually be part of your program to retain people. Give them chances for advancement and help them learn new skills. There are many agencies, because of the new rules with CDLs, who now get people their CDL license internally. Okay? And I know there's at least a couple of you who are thinking, if I do that, they'll leave. By the way, that's true. They may leave. They may go where they can get slightly higher rates. But I know of towns here in New York State that have really good training programs, give people chances for advancement, and people do leave those agencies and go work for other agencies or in the private sector. A lot of them come back. They come back after a couple of years because they realize, sure, I make a few dollars less an hour, but I get the weekends off. I have a lot less stress. I'm able to actually motivate and do work that I feel good about as opposed to just the rat race. So training people can be very valuable. And to do that, you're going to need to partner. You're going to need to partner with other agencies, such as Federal Highway, such as us with the LTAP Center. AGC has programs, your community college, your BOCES, okay? There are plenty of training opportunities out there, and you should have training as a core of what you're doing. That really does help retain your people. But the training approach needs to be adjusted to the audience. If you're training your younger staff who don't have CDLs, you're going to have to do it differently than if you're training people who are around for a long time. So, what suggestions do you have for training and worker development? Any thoughts or ideas there? Let's see if we can get a few ideas and share them out. Mentoring. Mentoring is a fantastic program. I think almost anybody you bring in new, pair them up with somebody. It might be a crew leader. It might not be. It might be an HEO or an MEO, that medium equipment operator, who can mentor those people and help them. Okay? Have the trainers come to them if possible, rather than sending them to a classroom setting. A lot of people just don't do well in a classroom setting. We know that. Even when we do our training, we do try to hold it in places close by. Set up standard operating procedures so everybody's on the same page, and give some ownership to the crews to develop those standard operating procedures. We'll talk more about that when we get into motivation a little bit. Okay? Let's see, I'm looking for 2 more that are in my list I wrote down and I got from Victoria. Let's see if anybody pops them into there. Okay. Yes. Yes. Well, somebody put in rewards. We're going to talk about that when we talk about motivation, but give people, why do I do this? If I take this training, maybe I get a bump in my salary, or I'm now allowed to get a promotion. Okay. Make training valuable. Ah, there's the other one I'm looking for. Ask for feedback. Send people to training and say, hey, when you go to the training, I want you to bring back an idea and try to implement that idea. If the idea is we should always be wearing a hard hat, maybe you don't want to do that one, but maybe you do. Maybe you can use that as a reason to get things started. Focus on things that are valuable to everybody. Safety, of course, is a huge one. You can't go wrong by focusing on safety and giving people hands-on experience. Let them try things out. If there's somebody who's interested in driving a truck, maybe during the fall or the winter when you're out just in the yard, let them try moving the truck up and down, see what they feel. Can they actually shift the gears? Okay. And by the way, for younger employees, they start seeing all this technology. They at first think, this is just old school stuff, but more and more modern equipment, you've got to have a pretty good sense of the technology. And that technology, again, we would talk about this longer in another webinar, but technology can assist with labor shortages in the short term, and long term, it might actually help bring younger people into the profession. And now the picture of that loader behind that's on the lower left corner, that doesn't look like technology. That just looks like an old-fashioned roller, but it's actually got built into it extra sensors that can detect when the pavement has actually been compacted properly. And it can give them real-time feedback to get better quality for compaction. And that actually gets some people who are like, well, that's pretty cool. They can actually mix like a technology with getting to do something they can see the work. Okay. So let's just ask, what kind of tech have you brought into your department in the last 4 or 5 years that 10 years ago you would have said, no way. But what kind of tech have you brought in? I bet you're not thinking they're tech, and yet they are. Surprisingly, nobody's answering this one, Jody. And yet there's actually maintenance software. Yeah. Mobile asset management software that fits in your truck. Yep. ERS, GIS systems that are out there. So you can track your data and your assets. Yep. Cell phones. You don't think about cell phone as technology, but the cell phone's only 20 years old. Maybe it's not since COVID, but cell phones have changed. Cordless tools. My father-in-law never would use cordless tools, but the battery technology has really improved. Okay. Your CAD software for engineers doing design. We almost do everything on CAD these days. Very, very rarely do we do it with paper and pencil. Okay. You know, GPS, ground penetrating radar systems, and GPS rovers to know where you are. Your cell phone with the tracking where you're going. Voice technology so you can write things. Even AI, though, be careful with AI. We could do a whole webinar on that. But inventory systems. Um, I'm just going to ask you to raise your hand. Raise your hand if your snowplows are equipped with backup cameras. Raise your hand if your snowplows are equipped with backup cameras. Yeah, a couple of you. That's not new technology, but if you've never had them before, it certainly is new for you. So again, tech may not be the newest and greatest nationwide, but it might be the newest and greatest for you. Talk to your neighbors, talk to your colleagues. You might find some pretty cool stuff out there that you can use. Okay. But again, we don't want to throw out the old like we showed with the sprayer for the chip seal. Okay. Now, part of the retaining people is to give folks some balance. Now, I show these four pictures. These are four pictures I've taken travel around New York State. I'm very fortunate. I get to travel around what I think is one of the prettiest states in the country. I'll go up against almost anybody. I haven't been to Alaska, so I'll give them a chance. But waterfalls, lakes, mountains, pretty cool stuff. I'm able to do that. Okay. There are some places where you couldn't, even while I'm traveling. Yeah, I sometimes take my own car, because of rules, that's okay. But that work-life balance is amazingly important to people. Okay. And surprisingly, you may not think it's important, but it probably is. We can accomplish the mission and still meet the employee's personal and family needs, but you got to think a little bit. Maybe think outside the box for that work-life balance. Okay. Now, this is, it's a slide Victoria put together. I'm going through it and I'm like, I don't think we can telecommute snowplows. I just don't think that's feasible. So no, not everybody in an agency can telecommute, but maybe some can. So for instance, today, Jody is working from home. Her office is on the eastern side of our building. It's already over 85 degrees in there. The AC will not keep up. So she's telecommuting. We set that up so she could. Maybe your office staff could. Not every day, and certain times they got to be in, but think about that. Do you have flexible work hours? Raise your hand if you switch from 5 to 4 day uh, during the year. Raise your hand. I bet quite a few of you do. Statewide, most counties and towns and a lot of villages switch from 5 day week to 4 day weeks. That's flexible work hours. Yeah, it might be written in a contract or in an agreement, but that's still flexible work hours. And maybe you can find ways to incorporate that into your activities and give people flexibility. The big key is if you can, and I understand there's certain rules you may have to follow, union, non-union, things like that, but talk to your team. Get a chance. Sit down and figure that out. You might find what you thought was impossible is feasible. Okay? I'll bring up an example and then I'll give you a chance to put some examples in. That's compensatory time or comp time. Okay? Now, first, just raise your hand if you have comp time set up somewhere in your system. Just raise your hand. Okay? Yeah, quite a few if you do. Okay? The idea is if they work overtime, rather than getting paid overtime, you allow them to switch it for something else. Okay? So if they work a 10-hour day, they can take 2 hours somewhere else, but they don't get overtime. But that week they still work less than 40, but they're allowed to then be flexible. Maybe they can leave early to go to a ball game. And that actually is the idea that I've got. It was an agency where guys wanted to coach their kids' little league teams, but they were working too late. And so the highway superintendent was like, well, I'll tell you what, if you'll work extra on these days, we'll shorten it the other days. And the crew was like, oh, cool. And a couple of guys who didn't have kids, they got to go home a little early. And they were okay because they understood they're part of a team. Again, you're going to have to look at your operations. Maybe there's certain weeks where you just got to work and you do have to do overtime. Maybe you got to go 5 days during chip seal operation season. But think about that. So let me ask you, just give me some examples. I'd just like to see 3 or 4 examples where you've actually helped work-life balance. And again, it may not be what you think. Let's do examples of where you've helped with work-life balance. You're probably thinking you haven't, but I bet you have. And you haven't even thought about it. And those little things can make a huge difference. Allow people to telework when feasible. Yeah. Again, not every job can do that, especially in our field. We know that. But that's something that's possible. Remote work. Okay. Somebody put in the Q&A, let people leave early for a doctor's appointment. Okay. Now, whether you document that or not, that's something you have to decide. You want to be consistent, but yeah, approve time request whenever operationally possible. Allow flexible schedules. Set up summer hours that might be slightly different. Okay? Little things like that can make a huge difference. I used to, when I worked for Yates County for the Highway Department, I used to officiate soccer games. And so I might leave an hour early to get to the game. But if there was an event, well, guess what? I might have to cancel my game and, get ready to go help with the paving or something like that. But give some flexibility. Can you set up where maybe people could have a slightly longer lunch? Um, Larger agencies can do more flexible things, But again, you might be thinking, oh, that's not feasible, but you might actually be able to do it. Talk to people. Now, I'm going to give you one that I know none of you have, but it's just an illustration of the kind of little things that can make a huge difference. And yet, you might have actually done something similar. And this is Washington State DOT. They have a program that after the paternity and maternity leaves are done, they're still allowed to bring babies in. I think it's up to year two. I need to check the details on that with our colleagues from Washington. We'll see them in a couple of weeks. Um, but they're allowed to bring the baby in. They've set up programs for that in certain offices. And you're going, oh, we don't have a program like that. But have you ever been with somebody and they brought their kids in for half a day because they couldn't find a babysitter? And they had sat over and did craning over in the corner? If you have, you've got flexibility. Think about giving that. That's part of the overall package of keeping people because they're part of your team. And so let's finish our discussion talking about motivating people. Okay? How do we motivate people? So, how can you motivate your employees? And then I'll give you 4 or 5 ideas that Victoria sent me and a couple of more of my own. Okay, I'm going to give you about 15, 20 seconds to put your answers in, and then I'll show the results. Hopefully there's some answers here. Can you motivate? Okay, here we go. Let's see what we got. Give them feedback. Oh yeah, definitely talk about feedback. When you can, give them some incentives. When you can, saying thank you, show them you cares in the Q&A. Talk to them one-on-one. Rewards if you can do it. Bonuses may not be feasible from a financial standpoint, but if you can, be predictable. Yeah, don't be inconsistent and try not to treat employee A different than employee B other than where you need to because of the real world, but not because, oh, you like that person better. Ooh, that's one of the worst things you can do. Give insights to the workload. Celebrate your wins. Don't punish desired behaviors. Absolutely not. Okay? Create an enjoyable work environment. Yeah, we don't want people out there doing horseplay, but you can make work something people look forward to. Okay? And yeah, celebrate the milestones when somebody's been there 5, 10, 15 years. Okay? Little things can make a huge difference. Um, I know of an agency that the housing authority that every month they do a little cupcake birthday for everybody who has a birthday that particular month. So they all get, shared on the first or second day of the month, whatever the Monday or Tuesday is that they do that on. Little things like that, team building events. Again, yes, there's financial rules. You've got to be aware of those. But let's talk about some motivational ideas. And again, here's a few that Victoria sent that I think are pretty cool. One of them is to create, and this is the word, intrapreneurs, like an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is spending money out and they spend all the money and all that. Think of one internally. Give people ownership of projects. Okay? Let them be maybe not the boss, but a boss. Let them have the ability to make decisions on a job. Okay? And yeah, celebrate the projects with compliments. Give them pride in what they do. Okay? If you let folks actually develop their own skill set and the ability to make changes that are their own, you'd be surprised what you'll get out of them. Now, of course, what that means is you have to make sure everybody's on board with what you want to get done. So you have to talk to people and explain, hey, here's what it needs to look like at the end. Here's what's important. Okay? So let's say you're putting in a culvert pipe. Is it important that the culvert pipe is put in exactly the same way every single time? Well, no. What's important is it's compacted well, is that it doesn't settle, that it doesn't erode later on. And as long as everybody on board, you might find they've got a way to do it. And we'll come back to what happens when they mess up a little bit here in just a minute. Okay? Give people pathways for growth. Okay? Now, a larger agency, I know it's easier to develop what are called career maps, where you essentially give people a pathway forward. But even a relatively small agency, if they know, hey, after a while, I might be able to become a heavy equipment operator if that's my skill set. Or maybe I can become a crew leader or even the general foreman for a middle or larger agency. So those can be useful things if there's a pathway. If there's not, people are going to feel dead-ended pretty quickly. So you want to give them that opportunity for growth. Okay. We try to do that here as much as we can. So for instance, our program manager, Amanda Kay, started in a role, event coordinator, then became our communications person. Now she's a program manager. You can't give them every path, but give them a path. And by the way, don't push people into places they don't feel comfortable, they don't want to go. You may get somebody who's a great equipment operator, but you and I know those people who are not going to be good crew leaders. Don't make someone go beyond where their skill set and or their interests are. They may be happy with that. There may be people who get to a certain level and that's where they want to stop. That's okay. If you can do that, everybody can win. But you always, whatever their level is, give them the ability to learn new things, which means you got to probably have some money for training. You got to have some opportunities for them to get out and learn new things. And that training could be through us with, Cornell Local Roads and the LTAP Center. It could be through a local contractor. Um, it might be that they get to be the roller operator with a paving job. And they learn how to run the roller. So later on, it helps you. Find ways for them to learn new things. Most of us are pretty curious, and people always go, "Oh, I had bad memory." Okay? So I'm going to ask you to raise your hand one more time. How many of you had little kids that had a dinosaur obsession? Raise your hand if your kids had at one time in their life a dinosaur obsession. Okay? And I'm betting about at least 5 or 6 of you are going to have a dinosaur obsession with your kids. They could remember all the names of the dinosaurs or the Pokemon or something like that. Find what people get obsessed about, what they're interested in, and you'd be amazed what they can learn. Okay? And that means you're going to have to support them investing in themselves. That means you might need to give them some time to go take some training. You might find ways to let them invest in themselves. And yes, that means they might leave. You have to take that risk. But if you take that risk, you may find they like staying there because it's a good place to go and grow and create a community, or they leave and they come back. Okay. But you're going to have to provide that support. You're going to have to give them recognition. If possible, as already been mentioned in the Q&A, specific accolades for individuals. And the attaboys, a good job. Okay. Might not be any more than just a note. Hey, we changed the procedure, and it's thanks to Joe that we changed that procedure. But if possible, do accolades for people. Promote peer-to-peer recognition, that they support each other. Yeah, a little bit of razzing might be okay, but boy, if people feel like that guy's always rubbing on me, is that creating a team? You really want to create a recognition. And we actually like recognition from our peers, almost more than we like it from the boss. And then, of course, if you can get recognition from the customers, okay? That's the audience that we serve, the citizens that we serve. And a great comment from Al in the Q&A. When there's a screw up, look for solutions, not blame. And I'm going to come back to that. The next slide actually talks about that. So for instance, how to ask how to patch the hole in the canoe. Don't waste resources looking for the culprit that dropped the axe. First, fix the problem. If you have to assign blame, you have to. Maybe there's a legal requirement, but spend more time and effort to make sure the problem doesn't happen again. And a lot of times people make mistakes for reasons they aren't aware of. Try to help them learn and grow on those things if possible. Okay? So, but recognition from customers can make a huge difference. If somebody drops off some drinks, and I'll say sodas just to be polite and all that. If they drop something off, it shows up in the lunchroom. Sure, make sure they don't drink that soda in the lunchroom. But again, be realistic about it. If you've got a policy that you need to follow, you got to follow the policy. Do what you can to get recognition from the customers and share it. And that's one place, by the way, social media can actually be very useful. But make sure the crew knows about it. Recognize the crew and put them foremost in front if you can. When you take the picture of the ribbon cutting, don't cut the ribbon. Give that ribbon cutting opportunity to maybe the crew leader who was most responsible, or the two people who made an innovation that saved you money. Okay. But you do want to do this. And it's called psychological safety. Okay. And it's amazing how powerful this is. People like to innovate, but innovations don't always succeed. Okay. But when they do succeed, they are our keys to improvement. They're keys to creating community that creates to motivate people. They're our keys for success. But you got to make it okay to fail. Now, some will say make it okay not to succeed. Pick your way you like to say it. But make it okay to fail because failure is always an option and can lead to innovation. Now, I will say there's one here. It's safety. Now, I'm not talking psychological safety. I'm talking physical safety. We don't ever want to put a situation where people feel like they aren't going to be safe. Okay. So jumping into a hole that's 10 feet straight walled with no shoring, that's not innovation. That's risk. Don't take risk, but give them psychological safety to try things out and learn. Give them flexibility because I hate to say it, we aren't making widgets. We're not making 545 spring widgets. We're doing a service, and we don't think about that. We think, oh, we're paving roads, we're doing chip seals, we're doing crack repairs. No, we're doing a service. We're making a road to connect communities. Snowplowing is not building things. In fact, it actually damages pavement. But snowplowing is one of the most critical things we do. So we're providing a service. Now, one of the things we like to do, in fact, we're almost required to do it, is create metrics on what we do. Raise your hand if your agency provides metrics of what you've done to the board. Raise your hand. If you're working for a government agency, you probably should be raising your hand. You're reporting things anyway, even if you don't realize it. Heck, if you do a CHIPS report, you're doing a metric. Okay? But here's the thing. Metrics can be really valuable. They actually help motivate people, but focus on the metrics that support results of what you're doing. How much salt you used for snow plowing, how many miles of ditching you got done, how many potholes got filled, but more importantly, maybe how many potholes you filled survived the entire spring. Focus on the results delivered. Okay. And again, give that crew the flexibility and how they get there. As Al says in the Q&A, focus on how to fix the hole, not on why we dropped something. Okay. And then work on getting things forward and moved into the future. So let me give you one more chance to give me some ideas for motivating your employees. Let's see if we can get a couple more new ones here. We ended with team building events. Anything else you can think of that you might do now? Okay, I don't see any new. I'm going to give you two that I think are useful, and I'll give you the key takeaways and get you out of here at the top of the hour. Um, Somebody put in a safety meeting followed with a little food. Yeah, that can be very effective. Bring in some cupcakes or some donuts while you do a safety meeting. Okay. Let somebody write the SOP, the standard operating procedure, and try to minimize how much you change. Okay. Give folks some slack to manage the work as they see fit. Again, before they leave, make sure everybody knows what the goal is. If the goal is to get, for instance, a culvert backfilled or maybe a section of road patched, don't make it where if something breaks down, they have to get hold of you. Let them make some decisions. Let's say a roller breaks down, but the next town over has a roller. If you've got a good setup, the crew leader can call the town superintendent in the other town and go, hey, our roller broke down. If you've created a good atmosphere, they can help each other out. Don't stop jobs because they have to go through you or they have to go through some process. Create family events is something else that Al threw in there. You can motivate, you'd be surprised. But again, that comes back to talking to people. Okay. So key takeaways, You're going to need to recruit earlier than you've ever thought. You're always going to need to be recruiting to some extent. Okay. You need to motivate people. We need to look back. Okay. You need to embrace technology. There's more of it out there than you might think. Training is continuous. I see someone has put in there they have an official safety meeting once a month, that the topic might be from an incident, but that's training. Training is continuous, and it could be tailgate talks, it could be formal training like these webinars or the workshops we do, it could be one-on-one. Make training a lifelong learning, and you'd be amazed how much a lot of people will respond to that. And by the way, those are the workers you want. Build a sense of community where you can. Look for ideas everywhere. Um, Borrow, steal, better yet, reference ideas from each other. That's always valuable. And then remember, we call it work-life balance. There's a part of me that concerns when I hear that phrase, I'll be completely honest, and that is we think work and life are somehow separate. It really is life balance because work is part of life. And if we can do a good job balancing those things, giving people flexibility, we can get a lot done. And a lot of that is motivation and recognition. And it can be giving people flexibility for work, recognizing them publicly, recognizing them one-on-one. Some people, by the way, prefer that. Some people do not want to be recognized in a public setting. Learn who those people are, but give them the recognition. They still might like it. Okay? So that's all I've got today. Ideas are everywhere, whether you're out in the middle of Iowa or you're in the Finger Lakes. We can do more than we think. Yeah, we have to fight some battles. They're going to be hard, but we need to be thinking about finding, retaining, and motivating your employees. If you have any questions, you can send me an email at david.org@cornell.edu or just our general email, clrp@cornell.edu, or go to our website, NYSLTAP.org. If you've got a cool idea, send it our way. Maybe we'll post it on our website. We'll give you credit too, I promise. With that, it's 10 o'clock, top of the hour. Thanks again for joining us. Have a great day. We'll see you next week on one of our foundational webinars. Bye-bye.